So one of the more common tools you'll use for measuring and also for some marking in the workshop are calipers. Now we've got both direct measuring calipers, such as these three here, as well as transfer measurement calipers, such as these three here. I'm going to start off with this little guy. This is just a little manual $5 caliper. I like to take this guy to the stockyard if I'm looking for some used metal and I need to measure some dimensions on. This gives me a quick idea of being able to measure thickness or the diameter of a piece. Not super accurate. It's going to be as accurate as you can visually see on the tag marks. A lot of different companies make this, and you can find it in a lot of different areas. This one says it's made in Germany. I can say it slides very smooth, and I've had it for many years. It's been out in the weather, gotten wet, gotten muddy, and it's held up. It's pretty much brass and stainless steel, so no real worries about corrosion there. So that's the kind of on the cheap end of what you'll be able to get for a caliper. Next up, this is a Grizzly, so it's an off-brand unit. These will work fine for the majority of what you need to do. Their accuracy may not be 100%. The machining precision may not be 100%. If you look at the jaws here, there's a few little offsets where things aren't perfectly lined up. It's still going to measure just fine for the majority of tasks. Now my battery is dying on this one, so the display flashes. This is a unit that if you move it too fast, or if you take the battery out and move it, it actually automatically turns on and off, and it does a fairly good job of keeping its measurements there. And it re-zeros fairly well. And I think this was somewhere around the neighborhood of $10, $20 on sale. So pretty cheap, pretty straightforward. But if you take the battery out, move it down, it doesn't have an absolute scale. Turn it back on, it'll give you some odd number. It's not going to be accurate. You can take it back down to closed and zero it, and you're good to go. Now, if you have the money to spend, I really do like the eye gauging Origin Cal. This one is absolute, so no matter where I move it with it off, as soon as I turn it on, it will give me an accurate reading of where it's at. I can take the battery out, move it, turn it on, it'll still give me an accurate reading of where it's at. It re-zeros very well. I've not had any problems with it zeroing. The quality of machining is very good on it. A lot of reviewers have compared this to Mitutoyo and Starrett and found that this is just as accurate and just as useful as those tools costing 2, 3, 4 times as much. So this is a pretty nice little guy. It's both of these that I've shown here are 6-inch. Sorry, the other one was actually an 8-inch, so this is a 6-inch. That's going to do the majority of what you need in the mini machine shop. You can get these on up to 36-inch long if you really want to spend a lot of money and have an unwieldy tool. Not very good for the miniature machine shop. So a 6-inch is fine. Sometimes you might be able to get by with a 4-inch as well. The use of these, so you can do a rough slide like this. The thumb wheel allows you to move it slowly and in finer adjustments. And then if you want to transfer an adjustment, there's a little locking knob on here that prevents it from moving. So if you want to keep that adjustment on there, you can. This one happens to have a data port. If you want to hook it up to a computer, you can do so. And we have a couple of different ways of doing measurements with this. One is measuring the outside of a piece, such as we're doing here. If it's a smaller piece, you'll want to move it more towards the back. Don't always move out here, particularly on those very sharpened edge jaws. You can end up getting a tilt measurement like this. That's exaggerated, obviously, but so you can do outside measurements there. You can use inside measurement for a hole like this, or if we wanted to measure the bottom width of that slot, we could get a fairly accurate measurement on that. And then the last way of using these is as a depth gauge. So the bottom extends out, and you can press down against it to get a depth reading, and that depth reading will be displayed here. Another use for these is inscribing a line. This isn't the most accurate way, but depending on what you're trying to do, it may be good enough. I'm just going to roughly set approximately 1/2 inch there. And then I'm going to hold one jaw against the bottom, and I'm going to use the tip of the other jaw to scribe a line. Now that line is very thin. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera unless I switch to a closer angle. Now if we were to use a marker or a layout die such as this, then as we scribe it, the line will become clearer. It's still fairly thin, and I mean, that's actually to our advantage, as we have a very precise line. You can probably see it now on the camera. The drawback to this, as far as why I say it's not the most accurate, is whether you hold it here or whether you hold it down here, you're going to get different measurements. So how well you can keep this lined up with the edge of your piece is going to really depend on how well you can make a measurement or a mark. You can scribe with the inside measuring jaws as well. You can also, there are a variety of other ways you can use this. Let's say if you're measuring something, so this is 0.63625. Now if I want to zero that out, and for some reason I want to measure this piece, then I can tell the difference. So this one's 0.6085 larger than this other workpiece. So you can do some zeroing work like that. You can also go in the opposite direction and go into negative numbers. A lot of these will have both imperial, so inch, and metric measurements. The one complaint that I do have about this is that it doesn't auto power off, and it doesn't auto power on, which would be a couple of nice things. Even that cheaper Grizzly unit does auto power on and off. So those are the basic uses of direct reading calipers. Now, these units will usually only cost a couple dollars a piece, and you can typically find things like this at swap meets or used on eBay as well. Or if you buy an import from China, you'll maybe spend $3 or $4 and it'll be shiny and new. These are designed for doing the same types of measurements. So if we wanted to do an inside measurement, for example, we can do an inside read of this piece. Now at this point, we don't know what that is. We can transfer it or reference it, or we can use another tool such as our reading calipers, or simply a ruler to get the measurement that we need off of those points. The nice thing here is this is cheap. So it's also, you can also get these in very small sizes and a variety of ranges. So you might be able to get this into a spot where you can't necessarily get this, or to be able to do a deeper reading. Whereas on these jaws, we're going to be fairly limited on how deep we can go and take an inside reading. If you're using it on the machine and you happen to damage them, you're only out a couple dollars, rather than this eye gauging, I believe, was $70, $80 or so. If you're using a Starrett or something along those lines, you're looking at $300 plus or minus. So use these when you need to. We've got the same idea here with outside measurements. This is really handy for checking. So if you've got something set to where this is a reference piece, and we want to use this piece to duplicate another piece on the lathe, well, now we've got a rough measurement that we can quickly take and do while on the lathe and while turning, to get an idea of how close we are or how much more we need to take off. These are basic friction models. There are some locking models. There are some with thumb screws to adjust them. These are all, this is inside, but you can also use it to measure outside diameters just by flipping the blades. Same here. If you're measuring a larger inside diameter, you can do that with these. And then this is referred to as a hermaphrodite because it's designed to measure both an inside surface and an outside surface. So if you've got a small hole to an edge you want to measure, or a prick mark to an edge you want to measure, you're going to be able to do that. And this tool is going to be able to do that much more accurately, and then you're going to be able to reference it with some other item. So that's just a quick overview. Again, there are a variety of calipers. This is just the kind of the brief summary of them. You can get calipers that have hardened, sharpened points on them for scribing. You can get so many different varieties. So this is just a quick sampling of some of the more common options out there.